The black man is capable of managing his own affairs. A popular quote by Osadefo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah about over 60 years of independence or 30 years of uninterrupted democracy. Has Ghana been able to manage his own affairs? A question that you and I must ponder each and every day. Hello there, welcome to the BA Show. I am Bright. I will see. Remember to subscribe to the channel and also follow us all across the world on Facebook at the BA Show, on Instagram and Twitter at the BA Show _. Now, despite economic measures put in place by government to tackle Ghana's economic crunch, the Ghanaian economy is best described as ailing, with inflation hitting 31.7% in July this year from 29.8% in June. This breaches the upper ceiling of the Bank of Ghana's targeted band of 6% for 11 months. This is the highest reading since 2003, surpassing market forecast of 30.8%. The Ghana cedi has depreciated so bad that the currency has lost 16% in value to the dollar in the first half of the year 2022 on the interbank markets, but over 20% on the retail forex markets. The cedi ended in June 2022 as the second most underperforming currency among 15 top currencies tracked by Data Bank research. I interest you to know that our current debt stock stands at 393.4 billion Ghana cedis, representing a debt to GDP ratio of 78.3%. Two rating agencies, that is the Fitch and the S&P, have downgraded Ghana's economy, giving us a negative outlook and describing our economy as junk economy. On this episode of the BA Show, we'll attempt to explore what can be done to raise the flag of Ghana higher. And joining me to discuss this issue is a senior lecturer who doubles as the head of department for applied finance and policy management at the University of Education Winneba Business School, Mr. Samuel Gajo Gamali. Welcome to the program. With inflation hitting 31.7%, I want you to come to the layman's terms. What does this mean to the ordinary Ghanaian who is on the streets of Accra or probably Kumasi?
Okay, so when we talk about inflation, the good old definition where you are spending more money to chase fewer goods. So when we say inflation is 37.1%, what it means is that if you are a student and your father gives you 100 cedis to spend in a month, your father must now give you 137 cedis, 10 pesos, for you to be able to spend the same amount of item. In fact, if you buy gari and beans and 10 cedis to eat in a day or in the morning, now you need about 13 cedis, 70 pesos to buy that same quantity of gari and beans. In fact, if you are a husband or a wife and you cater for the home with 1,000 cedis, you now need about 137 cedis, 10 pesos to be able to cater for the same quantity of food and services that you need to provide for the family. So when you talk about inflation going that much, that's what it is. So it puts pressure or the burden on home or caretakers to, as it were, support their families more in terms of finances. So when inflation hits that much and you are not being supported by your employers, or the work you are doing is not being getting its required customer base, purchasing power of customers are not going that high, and you realize that you are going to be cash strapped, which is going to affect the standard of living.
Right. You've talked about all of this and you've seen how our currency is eroded by major trading currency, inflation going high, if not all, almost everything look not right. Where are we heading towards as a country?
Now, before we can understand where we are heading towards, we need to understand some basics. Now, we have two forms or two types of inflation. Inflation can be caused by demand, where a lot of people are buying fewer items on the market. So we call it demand push pull inflation. Then we have the cost push inflation, where the inflation or the prices which are going up is not as a result of people having more money to buy fewer goods, but it's because the factors of production have gone up so high. So the one who is producing will just have to increase the prices for him to be able to break even. So if you understand these two basics of the causes of inflation, then we can now come to your question. So this persistent increase in prices is as a result of the depreciation of our currency. And so this type of inflation is not demand push inflation, demand pull inflation. It is cost push, in the sense that because our cedi is depreciating, the businessman who would import a shirt, a shoe, rice, coconut, anything outside, the person would have to bear an increment in prices. So that increment in prices is now turned on to the final consumer. A similar example is prices of fuel increasing. When prices of fuel increases, obviously it has a rippling effect or a contagion effect on almost everything within the economy. And so the current inflation is as a result of the depreciation of the cedi, which is being translated into the fuel prices. And that fuel prices is, because of an increment in fuel prices, it is causing other items to also increase. So what we are facing now is a cost push inflation. Until such a time that we will be producing majority of the things that we consume, we will always be affected by cost push inflation, which is usually as a result of what in economics we call external shock. So when we talk about external shock, it is the cost push is not coming from within. For example, when the laborers of producers start agitating for increment in salary, and the producer increases the salary, that increments in price of the salary, he will translate it into the price of the item. So the price of the item will go up as a result of what? Labor. But that one is an internal issue. So there is a way of resolving it. But where, by no fault of yours, two countries are quarreling, or they are at war, and because they are at war, let's assume majority of your importation comes from any of these two countries, you are forced to look for a different supplier. So for example, 40% of Ghana's wheat that we use for our common day-to-day bread comes from Ukraine. Now this Ukraine and Russian war, because of this Ukraine and Russian war, they are unable to get, businessmen are unable to import this wheat again. So ordinarily, you must look for a different supplier in another country. Now, in business, we all know that with time, you can establish a relationship with your business partner, which will lead to you buying items on credit. So you can buy the item on credit and the person will give you a year to pay. But when you find a different supplier, that difference of, you've not yet built your credibility with that different supplier. So that different supplier would want you to pay in cash before delivery is done to you. So the rippling effect of these things are what is causing our current inflation. So exchange rate metamorphosizing into fuel prices increment. Fuel prices increment, which is we call systematic risk, affecting almost every day-to-day item in the country, is causing the current inflation.
Let's stay a bit further on inflation and the cedi depreciation. Looking at the fast movie of the cedi depreciation, how impactful will it have on importers or those who are into forex trading?
You know, the common or the basic understanding is that we buy most of our things in cedis. We print our cedis ourselves, isn't it? But when you want to go and buy something in the US, will you use cedi to buy? What will you use to buy?
The dollar.
The dollar. And you don't print the dollar anyway. The dollar in the country is pumped by foreign direct investors, as well as government intervention in other international trade transactions. So where you have more investors importing more, they short the supply of the foreign currency in the system. With the shortage of the supply of the foreign currency, if more people want to import, they will have to struggle for the fewer dollar in the system, the fewer pounds in the system, the fewer euro in the system. And that is what is going to lead to the increment in the exchange rate, so that the one who has the most purchasing power can afford and buy it. So the current exchange rate problem that we are facing in the forex market is not a good thing. Some people in the forex market who are called speculators, might be gaining from this exchange rate depreciation, because I know somebody, a businessman, who decided in April to convert his about 1 million Ghana cedis into dollars. So 1 million Ghana cedis into dollars. He converted it into dollars and he changed it somewhere around June and made over, I think, 300,000 Ghana cedis profit. That is the act of a speculator. But indeed and in fact, we have very few of such speculators in the economy. That is why some time back, the Bank of Ghana and the Economic Management Team, led by a senior minister, Osafo said that we're going to regulate how people keep dollar accounts on the market. So speculators are also enjoying from it, and it's also costing this issue, because in the long run, if you and I decide to convert our small Ghana cedis into dollars, and we keep it or we hold it, because we think that it will depreciate for us to convert it back into cedis and make profit, our activity alone has caused a shortage of the dollar, which is going to lead into the depreciation of the cedi. So those in the forex market, the key players in the forex market, they are the speculators. We are talking about arbitrageurs, people who try to look at the mispricing in two currencies and profit from it. Some of these people are profiting, but in terms of quantum, they cannot match the number of businessmen who are demanding the currency for external purchases.
Let me take you back to 2007, where we did a cedi redenomination, and the cedi was equivalent to $1, if you could recall. Years down the line, the cedi has kept on depreciation and really hasn't stopped, to the point where we are buying the dollar for over 9 cedis. Structurally, what is wrong with how we are managing things, and that is making the cedi constantly depreciate?
2007, on paper, the cedi was equivalent to the dollar, but in terms of purchasing power, the dollar was $1 could buy much more items than the cedi. So it was just on paper that cedi was equal to the dollar, but in terms of purchasing power, the dollar had more purchasing power than that cedi equivalent. And in fact, when we started the discussion, I was telling you about the factors that cause push inflation. Devaluation is one of them. When you are trying to cook the books as though your currency is equal to another currency, but in the long run, the truth of the economy will expose, and that's what we are facing now. Before the devaluation, we realized that one cedi was not equal to $1, but we devaluated our currency, and that is what has led to this. But come to your question. The truth of the matter is that the Ghana cedi for a very long time has never been equal to the dollar in terms of purchasing power. It is so because the average interest rate on the Ghanaian market is about 25-30%. The average interest rate in US is about 1%, 2%. From the interest rate parity or covered interest rate parity or the law of one price, if your interest rate is different from another country's interest rate, come what may, their currency will have more value than yours, because your value keeps on depreciating. When you have constant inflation, your prices are currently always moving up. You have your cedi devalues. You know the reason why? When you have a higher inflation, what it means is that a common shirt is much more expensive in your economy than a country that has a lower inflation. Everybody is rational. Every economic agent is rational. Will you buy from the market with expensive item, or you buy from the market with a cheaper item?
I prefer to buy from the lower market.
That is where our problem starts from. So because US or other countries, inflation is stable, 1%, 2%, in some cases negative, every rational person will not want to buy from here. They will rather convert the local currency into dollars. By so doing, demanding more of the dollar in order to buy the cheaper item in a foreign country. when this happens over time, the value of your currency will fall, because there is no demand for your currency. The demand for the currency, people demand for currencies for countries whose items are cheaper. That is the cause. So our city can never be equal if inflation is always going up, if exchange rate is always going up. In fact, if GDP is not showing a good signal for foreign direct investors to invest more into your economy. If your GDP is very good, it tells people that, oh, the economy is booming. I mean, if I have any money, let me come and invest in this economy, I'll get my money back, and so on and so forth. If your GDP is always low, you are always running at a budget deficit, it shows a bad signal. So the investor, instead of putting his money into your economy, would look for an economy whose GDP is high, because the intention is that when I invest the money, I'll get higher return. And so by so doing, there is no value for your currency. And if there is no value for your currency would as well depreciate in value. So that is our problem as a country, and that is why it will be very difficult for us. So until such a time that we become industrialized as an economy, where we produce our items and the price of goods and services remain stable over time, external forces will see our goods to be cheaper, and that by so doing they will demand more of our currency to buy our goods locally. That is when your currency will move up.
As a country, you've mentioned about importation and the fact that we focus on industrializing our economy. What is the problem with our finances in the country that makes it so difficult for us to industrialize to the point where we don't have to rely so much on imports?
I see Ghana to be an economy or a country that can industrialize. Because when we talk about industrialization, what are we talking about? We are talking about producing more of the things we consume.
We have that capacity.
We do. We have arable land that can produce agricultural produce in large quantity. We can produce cooking oil, we can produce a lot of things. The only thing is that the business environment is not that smooth. Inflation, interest rate. I mean, if you are a businessman and the price of items keeps on increasing, it affects your production capacity. Because your raw material keeps on increasing, you cannot meet demand. So what do? You just backtrack. So until we have a very sound fundamentals, we have strong base, we can produce everything. We have a very good weather, we have a very good arable land, we are in the middle of,
we are endowed with so
many natural resources. So we just need a strategic plan, a national development plan. And if you have this national development plan, instead of ruling your country with people's promises, and a party's promise is what we call a manifesto, you rule your country with what? A national development plan. Because without a development plan, I mean, just take every company. Every company is ruled by, is governed by a strategic plan. So without a strategic plan, you are not ruling. So if I don't have a strategy, you don't have a strategic plan, you pick a chief executive officer, and he will come in, and what he thinks is right is what he will come and implement, isn't it? So what he will implement at the time he thinks is good, but the end result might not be better for us. But if the company has a strategic plan, anybody who is picked as the CEO, if the strategic plan is for 20 years and a person comes in halfway through, he knows that this is the plan of the organization and would tailor his or her ideas into what strategic plan that you have. But in our case, we don't have it. So when NDC comes, their promises, which is their manifesto, they come and implement it, they go. NPP too will come, their promises, which is the manifesto, they come and implement it, they go. And the truth of the matter is that these two parties, their promises are just to feed the party members. The promises that they bring, most of them are just to channel funds, the nation's funds into people's private pockets. That is all. And so everybody is thinking about, okay, if I should go on retirement, what will I take? Getting food and shelter for my family. So they come, a contract is given to people who don't deserve it. And but if you have a plan, anybody who comes, we know, okay, you need factors of production to produce. For the next 5 years, let's make sure that we have constant factors of production. Basic economics will tell you, if you want to industrialize, you need electricity, you need water, you need all that. We have a strategic plan where you have constant water supply to all areas. A strategic plan where you have electricity coverage to all areas. A strategic plan where we have internet connectivity to most of the coverage areas in the country. If you get those things rolling out, then you can now start building factories. If you build factories now without water, how do they produce? You build factory now with light off, how do they produce? So until such a time that we have a plan to put in these factors of production, strategically, we get these factors of production in place. But until when you are doing that, you look at another area, tourism, like what these people have done, Dubai and even Rwanda in Africa. You try to grow your tourism sector to be bringing in more cash flows. In fact, when you develop your tourism, Ghana, we have a lot of tourism sectors here. It will bring in huge sums of foreign currencies in our country, and will not suffer the need of always having a shortage of foreign currency, causing the depreciation of our currency. What the National Development Plan does for you is that each political party extracts their manifesto from the exactly. So there may be two views. Maybe when I count, maybe the plan is that we want to make secondary school affordable for people. That is the plan by the year 2024. Somebody will come and say, I'm doing free SHS. Somebody will come and say, no, I will give SHS subsidy of 80%. They will draft it from the national agenda. But if there's no agenda of that nature, somebody comes and tells you, I'm giving you free SHS. The person comes and implements the free SHS. You ask your result, what is the net output? When you give somebody free SHS and the person completes, what work does the person go and do for you to get a direct income tax? Until the person finishes university. So if that person is provided a free SHS, person finishes without a scholarship and the person is unable to continue to the tertiary level, that person is just in the middle. That person cannot get any sustainable work for you to get your money back in terms of your income tax. So then, are you moving forward or you are coming backward?
You are rather moving backward.
So until such a time that we have that, it will help us, each political party, extract the key themes from the national agenda. Then they can come out with their own ideas of how to go about issues. Then we can now vote on those lines. When Obama came, what did he do? He brought in Obamacare to help the agents in the US. In terms of their international policies and all that, it's laid down. They were just implementing it. When Trump came, what did he do? He built a long wall. He deported people who are not eligible to stay in the US. And he left. These are the few things that they do. Because it is in the plan that at this time, this is what we want to do. So, I don't know. As a country, it is about time for us to do that. And if we do that strategically, we involve technocrats, we involve all the political parties, I mean, people of high repute in the system. We have the men, we have the human capital to develop our own national development agenda. Until such a time, it is very difficult. People will be thinking about their pockets at the detriment of the country.
Well, let's stay a bit further on the cedi depreciation. Some experts are making predictions of where the cedi is likely to, hit 10 Ghana cedis or 11 cedis at the end of the year. What will this mean for those who are in the business and even ordinary Ghanaian like you and I? How is it going to affect us?
In January, one of your sister stations called me and I predicted that the cedi will be 13 cedis to the dollar by December.
So you also made your own prediction?
We have so many ways of doing that. I think in theory, you can use the interest rate parity, you can use the inflation or the law of one price to do your prediction, holding all other factors constant. So when I did mine, I think it's around 12.5 to 13 cedis. And for you to know, today it is 10.05 to the dollar. Just as we are talking, you can now buy the dollar for 10.10 cedi, 10 cedi and 5 pesos at the market. Now, your question is what?
My question is,
what is my projection? So, and then it is likely. Let me tell you, the forecasting of exchange rates is done using so many factors. we have theoretical factors, but we also have certain information within the country. When these things are happening, you can predict. Now note, we were downgraded in December last year. Every rational foreign direct investor who has his money in the Ghanaian economy, because of that downgrade, will just be waiting for the company to declare dividend or for the year to end, and will take all his money back. And so, based on your downgrade, meaning that you are not credit worthy, things are not moving on well within your economy, I'll wait. If my money matures in December, I extract all my currency from the or my money from the system, from the business. And that's what we started facing by the downgrade that we faced in December last year. So most people, the dividend that was shared to investors, they retained it because they were unsure about our economy. In fact, other economies have been graded well. So they take the money out of your economy. Now note, you don't print the dollar, you don't print the pounds, you don't print the euro. So when they take that money out of the economy, there's a shortage of supply of that foreign currency in your economy. They go and invest it in another economy. Your businessmen, the country is fundamentally import driven. So your businessmen will always demand dollar to buy items from outside. So the demand for the dollar, it is constant. Okay. But here is the case, because of the downgrade, people have taking their money out of the economy. So when you look at this prediction and looking at the fact that we are import driven, you realize that there's going to be pressure on the small dollar in the system or the small foreign currency in the system. So obviously things are going to, and now it's been worse. You have further been downgraded again. Now again, it also sends signal that you are not doing, and what makes it a bit worse is that it's not even a positive outlook. Master, if they say positive negative outlook, there's no hope. So you can't pay your bills, you can't pay your debts. Meanwhile, there's no hope. That is why the president, in his own projection, quickly told the finance minister to start negotiating with IMF. Because when you start negotiating with IMF, it tells people that yes, Charlie, they are putting things in place in order to settle their debts. In fact, this rating, I believe you get this. This whole issue about, rating, it has so many effects because a signal to people that you are not managing your economy. So instead of they pumping foreign direct money into your economy, they will not. They will withhold it and pump it into other economies, and that is what is going to. And if you are an industrialized economy, you can export and get more dollar to subsidize for the shortage of the dollar. But we are import, so there is constant demand on the dollar. So by way of looking at these events unfolding, you can predict that all things being equal, things are going to be tough. Last 2 years, we had that opportunity of going to the capital market to issue bonds. And you heard Ghana issuing Eurobond. Eurobond, basically what it means is that you are getting a bond in foreign currency, usually the dollar. So when you get that Eurobond amount coming in, you are supplying more dollar into the system. Now you don't have the opportunity because the cost of issuing Eurobond is high for you now. And we have now further been downgraded. So realize the whole of this year, we've not even thought about going to Eurobond. We can't. The cost of issuing the Eurobond, we can't. And we've further been downgraded. So we cannot go into the capital market to issue Eurobond to supply the dollar. So you are blocked there at one point. You have further been downgraded because you are not able to pay your debt. And so what will happen? The things we are consuming will continue to be consumed. So people will continue importing. And when people continue importing, the dollar will be. So that is how it works.
In years back, I remember clearly about 3 to 4 years ago, other developed countries and institutions were praising Ghana. They were singing choruses and melodies to our hearing, saying that the Ghanaian economy is booming, everything is on point. But currently, the tone of the drum has completely changed. Investors are going back. What went wrong actually?
You are not prepared for external shocks. If you are in a car moving and everything, you are on a good asphalt road, you think everything is well until you start hitting potholes. Then you realize that the shocks are not strong. Yes, where everything was well because we were on an asphalt road. The car is moving smoothly. When we started hitting potholes, when COVID-19 started hitting us, when the Ukraine-Russian war started hitting you, you have now entered into the portal. So the portal will now tell you whether you have a good shop or you have a bad shop. And the portal is what has exposed us now that we have a bad shop. Now, a shock of a country is usually catered for by its amount of reserves. In a layman's language, when you work, everybody tells you to save, so that when the times of need arises, you get a lot of money to settle your debt, isn't it? Here, so a country's saving is called reserves. We have foreign and local reserves. Some people, their reserves are in the form of the natural resources that they have. So gold, oil, cocoa, timber, you just keep a reserve. So that when you are in need, you dispose of some of the reserves in order to help. So like what happened? What happened during the COVID-19? People are laying off workers and all that. If we were to be having a strong reserve base, government can just go and sell some of our gold reserves and use that money to subsidize for all workers. Oh, I'll pay half of the salary, so don't lay them off. But if you don't have a strong reserve and you now enter into the portal, the car shocks which are weak would expose that you don't have a strong fundamental economy. So at the time when we were being praised, we were on an asphalt road. We have now entered into the portal. Fundamentally, we have a very weak reserve base. So because we have a very weak reserve base, when we are faced with external shocks like what you just mentioned, you feel the impact higher than a country that has a strong reserve base. Why do we save? If you earn 1,000 cedis, everybody will tell you save 200, save 200, because a day will come, you will not have the strength to go to work again. You fall on that savings, isn't it? But here is the case, you are not saving. You are not saving. You think every day you get the strength to work, and all of a sudden you fall sick. So by falling sick, because you are not saving, what will happen to you? Everybody will know that you were just spending. So our current economic crisis is not fully attributable to the Russian war or the COVID-19. It is because we have a weak reserve base. So when the unfortunate happened, we had no reserve not enough reserve to convert into money to help us. So we felt the impact direct. So you realize the vice president about 2-3 weeks back at one of his lectures said it's about time we have a strategy to have a strong reserve base. Now it is part of the development agenda. If you have this development agenda, it will tell you that if you produce cocoa, maybe 10 million tons of cocoa, 10%, 15% of them should be kept at a reserve. So that when the time of shock, external shock comes, you can dispose some of these shocks, some of these raw materials, get sufficient money to subsidize.
Mr. Gajo, very soon we'll be going for a quick break. And still on the rising level of inflation, for those who have invested in the bank, are they really at risk?
Very much at risk. So somebody told me that, hey, Sammy, now the treasury bill is 27%. I want to go and buy treasury bill. I said, oh, go and buy treasury bill. The price of things are increasing by 37%. And you have a treasury bill giving you 27%. If you buy the treasury bill, at the end of 1 year, if you use 1,000 cedis to buy the treasury bill at the end of 1 year, you get 1,270. But at the end of the same 1 year, an item you could use 1,000 cedis to buy is now 1,370. Have you gained or you've lost? You've lost. So you cannot gain from the banks. It is not possible to gain from the banks now. The banks too will be facing some small problematic issues, because even if there is sufficient funds for them to borrow, because policy rates are going high, their cost of borrowing, lending rates will increase, which will deter people from going to borrow from them. So they will have excess stock of cash, which are not being, as it were, put into productive use by giving it to people as loans. So that is the issue. So the banking sector will be affected greatly, because people might not profit. In fact, if you have a fixed deposit account which is paying you 6%, you are losing. Because at the end of the day, that 6% means that if you have 1,000 cedis there, At the end of the year, they'll give you 1,060. Meanwhile, there's something you can buy with 1,000, it's now 1,370. Have you gained or lost? Not, you've lost. So that is the fundamental issue. So with this current issues happening, the banks are going to suffer.
Of course, it's about time as a country we get a strong reserve base as well as sticking to the National Development Planning Agenda. You are still watching the BA show. I am Bright LC. We will go for a quick break. When we come back, Mr. Gajo will walk us through what we can do as a country to fly the flag of Ghana. Don't go away. We'll be back shortly. Welcome back to the program. You are still watching the BA show. I am Bright LC. Now, before the break, my guest highlighted on several factors that have accounted to our economic woes. Mr. Gajo, the government has in an interim, put in place certain measures. You can talk about the Bank of Ghana's policy rate by 2.5% to 17% in March, and also increase our cash reserve ratio to 12%. You can also mention about the capital adequacy ratio to 13%. Well, in spite of all of these that the government has done, we are still at where we are, and it looks like it's going to get worse in the future. In the interim, before we get a deal from the IMF, what should the government be doing to help our situation now?
It's a difficult question. It's a difficult question because what government must do, they don't have. They can't do it. What should have been done to arrest this inflation issue is that if government were to be having enough reserves, you convert some of your reserves to, as it were, use them as a subsidy, so that if fuel prices on the international market or based on the exchange rate, fuel prices are now, let's say, is now 10.95 per liter, government will come and subsidize the 10.95 and say, oh, boss, don't transfer this to the final consumer. We are willing to cater for 3 cedis of this fuel. So the subsidy, which the money you get from your reserves, will subsidize for what? The cost of fuel prices increasing. So instead of selling it to people at 10.95, they will now sell it to people at 7 cedis. And when it's being sold to people at 7 cedis, and fuel prices remains constant over time, inflation is not going to come. But we don't have the means of getting the reserves to subsidize. So you just transfer it to the final consumer. We don't have the means to say that, oh, because of depreciation of the currency, let's reduce taxes at the port. Because if you reduce taxes at the port, the person will just take the item and come and sell it as he or she had it from the foreign country. But the taxes at the port are high. So he will just what? Transfer that tax, transfer that depreciation into the final consumer to buy. So if you have enough reserve, you will now follow your reserves, convert them into cash, and use that to either subsidize, or if you can't subsidize, you reduce taxes for people not to feel the impact of the taxes, so that at least the reserve money will cater in for what? Your projected cash revenue. Instead of insisting that you are getting revenue from your taxes. So, and another difficult solution is reviewing most of our social intervention programs. Why are you giving nurses free money? Why are you giving nurses their allowances? Why are you giving nursing training allowances? Because we promised that when we come, we are going to give them.
So
but what is the?
Scrapped?
I think it should be scrapped. Master, if you don't have money, do you give money to somebody for free? You can't. It is what you have. That's what is what you have. But
this money supports those students in that area.
Indeed, it does support them. Why was it instituted in the first place? It was instituted because we have less supply of nurses. We have less supply of trained teachers to feed our schools. Now we have nurses in the house who are not getting posting. because we are not building, we are not constructing more hospitals. We have a lot of teachers in the house who are not getting posted. So is it still prudent for you to support? It's not prudent again to support, because the purpose for having that allowances has been achieved. So instead of giving it to them as allowance, you convert that allowance into a loan, so that the person takes the money and pays it back. Like what we do to tertiary institutions in Ghana. So you don't have the money, you are giving free. And the purpose for giving it free is not because of a strategic need. It is just because to fulfill what promises made in the manifesto. And that is our being. Now you have a lot of nurses, teachers going to China to teach English in China. So you give the person an allowance, and the person finishes and says, I'm not getting job in Ghana. I go to UK, I get employment as a nurse. Then he leaves your country. What benefit? What is the benefit for giving the allowance? So you see, the whole thing is that we are not looking at it from a strategic perspective. We are just looking at it because we want votes. We just want votes. That's all.
So we are not considering the future implications.
The hard truth is that we are not looking at the future implications. Because if you look at it, in fact, when you start building your house, it is difficult to eat 3 square meals a day. But when you finish building the house, you have a comfortable place to lay your head. That is what we must be doing now. Let the people feel the impact. Some free things cannot be given for free again.
So
those amounts of money can be
to be scrapped or reviewed.
No, it shouldn't be scrapped. It should be reviewed. I personally think that the senior high school free SHS should have been started at the technical school level. Why? When a technical person finishes, you can set up a factory for the person to start producing chairs for you, to start doing some electrical work for you, to start sewing items for a cloth for your various institutions. Through that, by giving them employment, you get your income tax in return. But in this case, so I think it should be reviewed to target people who are getting a direct skill. After the direct skill, that person can do some form of work. Through that form of work, you will be earning some salary and you can get your money back in terms of income taxes. And not to expand it to everybody. You see, if you review it, you can say, oh, the school fees is 1,002, but as a government, you want parents to pay 200 cents. Or parents should only cater for feeding the food of your kid. That's all. You don't pay academic visa fee, you don't pay tuition, you don't pay anything. That is how I think it should have started. You don't just scrap everything for free. So that if you give the technical people free, now we need technical skills. The chairs that we are sitting on, if we have sufficient technical people, they can be producing it for us instead of going to import them. It is part of the industrialization agenda.
And that will even, reduce the pressure on our country.
Exactly. So I think the free SHS should be reviewed to target what? This technical school people. Then after it has targeted...
But they are now being part of the program.
Yes, but if you review, they should get the full benefits. Then the senior high school should get some leverage. They don't get zero at all. They should pay something. All those monies that will be paying, is money going to government. You can use it to do something. In terms of need, those monies will come at the beck and call of government. And they will use that money to help us feel the direct effect of what we are feeling.
Pretty shortly, we'll be wrapping up the conversation. But before we do that, if you were the president, or probably you are the chairman of the economic management team, what could you have done differently to change our economic turmoil?
Now, one, the exchange rate, as I've told you, started from the downgrading. So what the decision the president took, engaging IMF is key. You know the reason why we are downgraded to CCs? We have $2.7 billion to pay this year. The arrangement government have made is to get 800 million cedis from African Development Bank, to get $200 million from international commercial banks, and our own sinking fund you have $200 million there. When you add $1 million to $2 billion, $800 million to $2 million, you have $1 billion. Plus the $200 million from our sinking fund, you have $1.2 billion. Meanwhile, you need to pay $2.7 billion this year. There is no avenue, nowhere to get the money to pay the $2.7 billion. If you take $1.2 billion from $2.7, you still owe $1.55 billion this year. Now, by engaging IMF to get $3 billion, you have more cash inflow to be able to get the $1.55 billion to pay off your debt this year. If you're able to pay off the debt, when the credit rating agency comes, you have paid your debt, so they will not rate you further down. What they do is that they look at the amount you are owing and how you are able to settle. This year, you owe 2.75, you've not been able to pay. In fact, all the arrangements you've made, if you pay, you will be left with 1.55. Where do we get it from? IMF engagement. We are seeking for $3 billion. So that $3 billion, out of that $3 billion, we can get the money and settle. So that next time when they are coming to grade us, because you are not owing again, you'll be graded upwards. When they grade you upwards per the theory of the signaling theory, it will signal to people that you are now doing things right, and for that matter, they will come and they will now bring in more foreign direct investment, which is going to increase the supply of the dollar in our currency, in our economy. By increasing the supply of the dollar, even if you do more importation, the effect will not be that much. So what the president is doing now is a step in the right direction. People will think that it's a step in the right direction.
It's going to reveal the positive result.
Given the conditions that comes with it. If the condition is that you do free SHS and you say you will not do it, they will not give you the money. And so you will not get money to pay your debt. So depending on the engagement that goes in, if everything goes well, it will send a signal that we are doing things right. But in the long run, we should have an agenda that seeks to industrialize an economy and not make. You see, you can industrialize your economy and you will still be import driven, but you can export more so that the net import export will break even, so that your currency will not depreciate. Because if your currency does not depreciate, your food items that you buy on the market remain stable. How would inflation increase? Are you getting it? So that is so currently we should work seriously at getting a good rating in the next rating window, which is around November, December. And so that people will have confidence in the economy and we think they will invest more. It will attract more FDI and also retain funds.
Well, let me pick your final comment before we sign out.
My final thought is that as an economy, it's about time we invite technocrats to sit down and have an agenda, a strategy. If all the political parties are invited to the round table to develop this national agenda, everybody will extract their manifesto from the national agenda. Then we can operate using a strategic plan, which is our agenda. And if that is done too, it is going to help us in the long run with this external short cycle. Then we should hope in the agenda we should have a strong reserve base. A strong reserve base helps you when you're in need. With a low reserve base, if you face external shock, you will be exposed. So if you're on the asphalt road, you will be enjoying until you start hitting potholes. So I think we should have a national agenda. We should have a strategic plan of building a strong reserve base, so that when the externalities or external shocks affect the country, the government can use some of these external reserves to pushing the populace. And we should avoid from policies that will give us more votes than policies that will make the country unsustainable. A country will borrow, but the aim is to have a sustainable debt. That's all.
Right, there is a certain satisfaction that comes from hearing the real story from the horse's own mouth. And of course, we should focus on the strategic national development plan so we do not get blown away by external shock, as Mr. Gajo has highlighted on the show. Mr. Gajo, it's been a wonderful time having you here on the show, and thank you very much for honoring our invitation. And that's how we draw the curtains down on the show. It's been a wonderful having you, and on behalf of the entire production team, thank you very much for watching. I am Brighter. We see continue to subscribe like, share, and leave a comment. You can also follow us on Facebook at the BA Show, on Instagram and on Twitter at the BA Show _. Thank you very much.